Ethan Carter had always prided himself on his ability to build things. As an architect, he knew the value of a solid foundation, one that could withstand any storm, any challenge. It was a mindset he applied not only to his career, but to his personal life as well. His marriage to Olivia was his masterpiece, the one thing he thought he had gotten completely right. They had met in college, two ambitious souls who had stumbled into each other's orbit and found something unexpectedly beautiful. Ethan had been drawn to Olivia's quiet intelligence, her thoughtful nature, the way she seemed to understand him without needing words. He was the dreamer, the idealist, while she was the realist, the calming force that kept him grounded. Together, they made sense. Together, they were unbreakable. They had been married for 5 years now, and Ethan had never questioned their connection. Olivia was his confidant, his partner, his best friend. They were a team. Their love was not flashy or all-consuming, but it was steady, reliable, and fulfilling. It was the kind of love that grew over time, anchored in shared experiences and mutual respect. They had built their lives together, from their small but charming home in Seattle to the way they shared their mornings with coffee and quiet conversation. There was a rhythm to their life, a balance that gave them both a sense of peace. But lately, something had changed. The rhythm had shifted ever so slightly, like a clock that was ticking a little out of sync. Ethan noticed it, but couldn't put his finger on what was wrong. Olivia, once so engaged and present, had started pulling back. She would spend more time in her photography studio, more time with her friends, and less time with him. When they did spend time together, the conversations felt strained, like they were both trying to avoid something they couldn't talk about. Ethan tried to shake off the feeling. It was probably just work stress, he told himself. He was busier than ever, and she had always been independent, a woman who didn't rely on him to fill every moment of her life. But even as he tried to convince himself, he couldn't ignore the growing knot in his stomach. Ethan had always believed that trust was the foundation of any relationship. He trusted Olivia implicitly, with every piece of his heart. She was the one person in the world he knew he could rely on. But now, that trust was starting to feel fragile. The cracks were subtle, but they were there. 2. The silent distance. It wasn't just the distance between them, the lack of communication, or the long hours at work that made Ethan uneasy. It was the small, unspoken things. The way Olivia would pull away when he touched her too casually. The way her smile sometimes seemed forced, as though she was hiding something from him. Or worse, hiding from him. She had always been affectionate, always quick to show him her love through quiet gestures. A gentle hand on his arm, a soft kiss on the cheek before bed, the way she would look at him with that secret smile only she could muster. But now those moments were becoming fewer and farther between. Ethan tried to address it, of course. He would ask her how she was doing, if everything was okay. Olivia would smile, give a gentle nod, and say everything was fine. But there was something about her response. It didn't reach her eyes. And that made Ethan's heart sink just a little more each time. There was a disconnect that he couldn't explain, a veil between them that neither of them had the courage to pull back. It was the silence in their house that spoke the loudest. The once lively conversations they used to have over dinner had turned into awkward, half-hearted exchanges. The moments of laughter that once filled their home were replaced by tense quiet, a tension that hung in the air like an uninvited guest. Ethan would lay in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering where things had gone wrong. He had never thought he would be in this position, questioning the foundation of his marriage, questioning the woman he thought he knew better than anyone else in the world. And then, on that fateful night, everything changed. 3. The whisper in the dark. It was around 2 a.m. when Ethan awoke, his body still heavy with sleep. He had been working late on a new project and was exhausted. The soft glow of the moonlight filtered through the blinds, casting long shadows across the room. He turned to Olivia, who was lying next to him, her back to him, as usual. Her breathing was slow and steady, a sign that she was deeply asleep. Ethan reached out to touch her shoulder, a simple gesture of comfort. But as his hand brushed against her skin, he froze. She was whispering. At first, it was just a murmur, something indistinct, something that might have been a part of her dream. But then, her words became clearer, slicing through the silence of the night like a knife. Noah. The name was soft but unmistakable. Ethan's heart stopped for a split second. Noah? He had never heard her mention anyone by that name before. A cold wave of dread washed over him as the realization began to settle in. Who was Noah? His mind raced as he tried to make sense of what he had just heard. Could it have been a dream? A random jumble of thoughts coming together in her sleep? He tried to rationalize it, but something in his gut told him this was no random dream. He had heard her clearly, and the name had been said with such familiarity, such ease, that it sent chills down his spine. Ethan lay frozen in bed, the weight of the night pressing down on him. His mind swirled with questions. Who was Noah? Was it someone from her past? The possibilities flooded in, each one darker and more sinister than the last. Had she been hiding something from him all along? He wanted to confront her, to wake her up and demand an explanation, but something held him back. The thought of hearing the truth, whatever it was, terrified him. What if the woman he had loved for so many years, the woman he had trusted with his heart, had been hiding a secret so devastating it would tear their lives apart? The night dragged on, but Ethan couldn't sleep. He lay there, staring at the ceiling, the image of Olivia's peaceful face beside him, now something he could no longer trust. What was going on? What had he missed? In that moment, Ethan realized he was no longer sure of the life he had built. And as the darkness of the night stretched on, so too did his fear. A fear that perhaps the person he trusted most was not the person he thought she was at all. The morning light filtered through the curtains, casting soft rays across the room. Ethan sat on the edge of their bed, his eyes still heavy from the restless night. He had barely slept, his mind racing with the words Olivia had whispered in her sleep. Noah. For hours, he had replayed the moment in his head, over and over, tried to convince himself it was nothing, that it was just a dream, an accidental slip of the tongue. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized how deeply unsettling it was. Noah wasn't just a name. It was a sign, a clue, something that pointed to a hidden world he had no access to. Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that he was standing on the edge of something vast and unknown, a precipice threatening to crumble beneath his feet. The life he had known was unraveling, piece by piece, and he was too afraid to look down and see the fall. His heart tightened as he looked at Olivia, still lying peacefully next to him. She looked so innocent in her sleep, her face soft, untouched by the weight of the world. The woman he had married was still there, right next to him, but the truth felt so far away. Who was Noah? Ethan reached for his phone, the screen lighting up with a single notification. It was from work, a message from a colleague asking for input on a new project. But for some reason, it felt like a distant concern, something so small and insignificant in comparison to the storm brewing in his chest. He needed to know who Noah was. He couldn't stand this uncertainty any longer. 2. The calm before the storm. As the day wore on, Ethan found himself in a haze of confusion. He went through the motions, getting dressed, grabbing his coffee, heading out the door. But the entire time, his mind was fixed on one thought. Noah. His usual drive to work felt different. The familiar streets, the honking horns, the steady hum of the city, it all seemed distant, as if he were moving through a dream. He tried to focus on his thoughts, to work through his fears logically. Maybe it wasn't what it seemed. Maybe Olivia had just been dreaming of an old friend. Maybe there was some innocent explanation he hadn't considered. But the problem was, Ethan didn't believe that. He knew Olivia. She wasn't the type to speak in her sleep about something or someone from her past. They had shared their lives with each other, opened up about every detail. And yet here was something he hadn't been told, something she had hidden from him. The thought gnawed at him, tearing at the fabric of the trust they had built over years. At work, Ethan was a shadow of himself. His colleagues noticed his distracted demeanor, his distracted nods to their greetings. He had always been sharp, quick to pick up on details, but today he could barely focus on the architectural drawings in front of him. His mind kept wandering back to Olivia, back to the name Noah. Was it a person she had been involved with before they met? Someone she had kept in her life after their marriage? Or was it someone new? Someone recent? He wanted to ask her about it, but how could he? How could he ask her, who is Noah, without revealing the truth of what he had heard, without betraying his own sense of insecurity and doubt? Would she lie to him? Would she say nothing at all, dismissing it as an insignificant moment? Ethan's hands clenched into fists as the questions piled up in his mind. The weight of not knowing was unbearable. 3. The silent betrayal. It wasn't until that evening that Ethan's world began to feel like it was breaking apart. He returned home late from work, exhaustion and worry etched into his features. The house was quiet, too quiet. Olivia's car was in the driveway, but she wasn't there to greet him. The smell of dinner lingered in the air, a faint trace of something he couldn't place. It seemed like the kind of meal she would have made if she were alone, something simple but comforting. The silence stretched between them, wrapping itself around the space like a cold, oppressive fog. Olivia appeared from the kitchen, her face lighting up when she saw him, but the smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Hey, how was your day?" she asked, her voice casual, but there was a tension there, something unspoken. "It was fine," Ethan replied, his own voice sounding hollow in his ears. He walked past her to the kitchen counter, trying to focus on something, anything other than the gnawing ache in his chest. Olivia followed him, standing just behind him, her presence like a shadow in the room. "I was thinking we could go out tonight," she suggested. "Just the two of us. We could go to that new restaurant you wanted to try." Ethan nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. "Yeah, sound great." He didn't mean it. He couldn't focus on dinner, or restaurants, or anything else. His thoughts kept circling back to one question. Who was Noah? He couldn't take it anymore. The words slipped out before he could stop them. "Olivia, who's Noah?" The question hung in the air, thick and heavy. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. Olivia's expression faltered, her eyes widening ever so slightly before she quickly masked it with a smile. "Noah? I don't know what you're talking about." Ethan's heart sank. It was the same lie she always told. The same distance. The same avoidance. "I heard you last night," he said, his voice trembling with barely contained emotion. "I heard you say his name in your sleep." Olivia's face drained of color. The silence stretched on, an unspoken acknowledgement passing between them. "I don't know what you think you heard," Olivia finally said, her voice tight, defensive. "But it was nothing. Just a dream." Ethan could hear the lie in her words, a lie so thick it suffocated everything around them. It wasn't a dream, he wanted to say, but instead, he remained silent, the words trapped in his throat. The truth was, he couldn't bear to hear the truth. Not yet, but in that moment, Ethan knew. The betrayal had already begun. It wasn't in the name Noah had spoken. It was in the way Olivia had pulled away, in the way her smile no longer reached her eyes, in the way their love had started to slip through his fingers like water. Ethan had spent years building his life around trust, but now, trust was all he had left to lose. 4. A house divided. That night, the house felt emptier than ever. They sat across from each other at dinner, the silence between them like a heavy weight neither could lift. Olivia was picking at her food, occasionally glancing up at him, but the connection was gone. There was no warmth in her eyes, no spark of affection, just emptiness. Ethan ate mechanically, trying to force himself to swallow the rising lump of anxiety in his throat. He wanted to ask more questions, to demand answers, but part of him was terrified of what he might find. What if it was worse than he imagined? What if Noah wasn't just some fleeting part of her past, but someone who had taken her heart away from him? What if she was already gone, even though she was still sitting there across from him, pretending everything was fine? As the nights stretched on, they fell into their familiar routines. Ethan headed to the living room to catch up on work emails, while Olivia retreated to the spare room, as she often did these days. They had stopped sleeping in the same bed months ago, their once passionate connection fading into a cold formality. He could hear the soft clicking of her camera as she worked on her photography, the sound both soothing and alien to him. This was it, wasn't it? He had been blind for so long, unwilling to see the truth because he feared it. But the truth was right in front of him, staring him in the face, and he couldn't escape it anymore. Olivia was no longer the woman he had married. And somehow, neither was he. 1. The uneasy days that followed. The days following the confrontation were heavy with silence. Every glance, exchange between Ethan and Olivia was charged with unspoken words, yet neither dared to speak them aloud. They moved around each other like ghosts, their once warm home now cold, suffused with the weight of the unsaid. The name Noah echoed in Ethan's mind like a haunting refrain. He couldn't let it go, couldn't forget it, no matter how many times he tried to bury it under the pretense of daily life. Ethan's mornings had become a mechanical routine. He would wake up early, leaving the bed that now felt foreign to him, its warmth only a reminder of the absence that had begun to define their relationship. He would make coffee, sit by the window, watching the world go by, the mundane, the predictable. He had always been someone who thrived in routine, but now that routine felt like a cage. Every sip of coffee, every passing minute seemed to push him closer to a breaking point. The world outside, so full of life, seemed to mock the stillness of his own existence. Olivia, too, had become distant. She still went about her day, her photography sessions, her trips to the local art gallery, but there was no warmth in her actions. Every time Ethan walked past her, he caught glimpses of her eyes. Her gaze was always just a bit too guarded, a bit too distant. It was like she was living in a world that had nothing to do with him, a world where he was not welcome. Noah's name still lingered in the air, like a shadow neither of them could escape. It was during one of these silences, as Ethan sat at the dining table, that he received an unexpected phone call. It was from Olivia's best friend, Emily, who had always been a trusted confidant. Emily was loud, vibrant, and the kind of friend who told the truth even when it hurt. "Hey, Ethan." Emily's voice crackled through the phone, as though hesitant to speak the words. "I need to tell you something." The world around Ethan seemed to stop. He swallowed, his heart skipping a beat. What was this? Olivia's been acting strange. More than usual, Emily continued, her voice laced with concern. "I don't know what's going on, but I think she's hiding something from you." Ethan's stomach dropped. So, he wasn't imagining things. "I don't want to get involved, but I think you need to know," Emily said. "She's been seeing someone else. It's been going on for a while now." The words felt like a slap to his face. Ethan struggled to breathe, his head spinning. "Who is it?" he asked, barely able to keep his voice steady. "I'm sorry, Ethan," Emily said quietly. "But I think you already know." Ethan's grip on the phone tightened until his knuckles turned white. He could hear Emily's words, but they didn't make sense. They couldn't. This couldn't be happening. 2. The unexpected confrontation. Ethan's pulse raced as he hung up the phone. His thoughts were a chaotic whirlwind. His entire world felt like it was slipping out of his control. The cold realization hit him with a visceral force. Olivia was having an affair. She had betrayed him, and she had done it with someone close, someone who had been in their lives for a long time. His worst fears were confirmed. The evening that followed was charged with an electric tension, like the calm before a storm. Olivia had gone out for her usual photography session, and Ethan found himself pacing the living room, his mind a maze of anger, confusion, and hurt. He wanted answers, needed them, and this time there was no avoiding it. When Olivia returned home, she was quiet, as though she could feel the shift in the air. Ethan's eyes didn't leave her as she entered the house, and for the first time, Olivia didn't smile. She didn't greet him with her usual warmth. She simply looked at him, her eyes full of guarded uncertainty. Ethan couldn't hold it in anymore. "I know," he said, his voice calm but cutting through the air like a knife. "I know about Noah." The mention of the name seemed to freeze Olivia in place. Her eyes flickered with something, shame, fear, guilt. The moments stretched between them, and Ethan saw the truth in her face, the truth that had been staring him in the face for so long. "Ethan, please," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I didn't mean for this to happen. It just did. It just did." Ethan repeated, the anger building up inside him. "How long, Olivia? How long has this been going on?" Olivia's eyes filled with tears, and for a fleeting moment, Ethan saw the woman he had loved so deeply, the woman he had trusted without question. But the woman standing in front of him now was different. She was broken, distant, and Ethan couldn't bring himself to recognize her anymore. "I'm sorry," she whispered again, but the words felt hollow. Sorry? Was that enough? Could it ever be enough? Ethan took a step closer to her, his chest tightening with emotion. "How long?" he asked again, his voice breaking. The question hung in the air, heavy with the weight of betrayal. Olivia looked away, unable to meet his gaze. She sighed, the weight of her secret crushing her. "It started a few months ago, after you started working late all the time. I didn't want it to happen, but it did." Ethan shook his head, disbelief written all over his face. "So, when did you stop loving me, Olivia?" His voice cracked as he asked the question, his heart breaking with each word. "How long did I not know you weren't here with me anymore?" "I never stopped loving you," Olivia said, her voice trembling. "I didn't want to hurt you. I thought I could fix it, but I couldn't." Ethan's world shattered in that moment, the weight of her confession crashing down on him. The woman he had loved for so long, the woman who had promised him forever, had already given her heart to someone else. And she didn't even have the courage to tell him until it was too late. 3. The heartbreak of realization. The house was silent again, but this time the silence was different. It was filled with the weight of broken promises and shattered trust. Ethan could barely breathe. The woman he had trusted with his life had chosen someone else, and it felt like his world had crumbled in an instant. Olivia reached for him, her hand trembling as she tried to touch him. But Ethan stepped back, unable to bear her touch. How could he? How could he let her hold him when she had already let someone else in? "I'm so sorry," Olivia whispered again, her voice pleading, but Ethan couldn't hear it. Her apologies were empty, a hollow echo in the face of everything she had done. He didn't want her apologies. He wanted the truth. He wanted the woman he had married back. But that woman was gone. The pain inside Ethan was suffocating, but it wasn't just the betrayal that tore him apart. It was the fact that he had been blind to it all. He had been living in a world of illusion, thinking that everything was fine, thinking that they were still happy. But the truth had been staring him in the face, and he had refused to see it. He turned away from her, walking out of the room and into the quiet emptiness of the house. As he stood there, staring into the darkness of their home, he realized just how alone he was. The life he had built, the love he had given, all of it had been a lie, and he didn't know how to pick up the pieces. This chapter delves deeper into the emotional fallout of Ethan's discovery, his confrontation with Olivia, and the beginning of the painful unraveling of their marriage. The focus shifts to the raw emotions of betrayal, hurt, and confusion as both Ethan and Olivia confront the consequences of their actions. The tension between them escalates, and Ethan's journey from disbelief to heartbreak intensifies, marking a pivotal point in the story. Setting. The scene takes place in the aftermath of the emotional confrontation between the main character, Ethan, and his wife, Lily. They are in their home, but it feels increasingly like a house full of secrets, and the emotional tension is palpable. 1. Ethan's emotional collapse. The chapter begins with Ethan waking up the next morning after his confrontation with Lily. He's exhausted, mentally drained, and filled with uncertainty about everything he thought he knew about his marriage. There's a noticeable shift in the home. Something heavy hangs in the air. His mind constantly flashes back to Lily's cryptic words, and he's unable to sleep. He replays the fight over and over, dissecting every word, every tone. He recalls the strange looks, the half-hidden smiles that he never noticed before. In an attempt to distract himself, he goes for a run, but finds that even physical exertion does little to shake the weight of his thoughts. The narrative can focus on his physical exhaustion mirroring his mental state. The imagery can be harsh: sweat, heavy breathing, and the relentless thought patterns that drown him. 2. Lily's internal struggles. Meanwhile, Lily is deeply conflicted. She is ashamed, guilty, and terrified, but she also knows that the truth will come out soon enough. She doesn't know what to do with her emotions, and she feels trapped in her own lies. Her facade as the perfect wife is starting to crumble, and she can no longer pretend that everything is fine. Lily tries to maintain normalcy at work, but the weight of her secret follows her. She begins receiving messages from the other man, David, who seems to be pressuring her to leave Ethan. Lily's guilt is palpable, and there is an internal battle between wanting to keep her marriage intact for the sake of stability and giving in to the allure of David's promises. The focus here is on Lily's emotional turmoil, her deep desire to have a normal life again, and the insidious pull of her actions that have compromised everything she once held dear. It becomes clear that she has never been in this kind of situation before and is utterly unprepared for the aftermath of her decisions. 3. The confrontation at the dinner table. As the day moves on, Ethan and Lily finally face each other again, sitting at the dinner table in a strained silence. The narrative can describe how the atmosphere in the room feels suffocating. They don't know how to approach each other anymore. Ethan decides he can't live with the uncertainty anymore. He confronts Lily again, asking her for the truth. His voice cracks with emotion. He demands that she tell him what's been going on, accusing her of hiding things for months. Lily breaks down at the dinner table. She admits that there's something she's been hiding, but she hesitates before fully confessing. She tells Ethan she's been having an affair with David, a colleague at work, but she tries to explain that it was a mistake, a fleeting moment of weakness. The emotional weight of the confession crashes over Ethan. This moment should feel almost surreal. It's the culmination of everything he's been suspecting, but the confirmation of it is like a physical blow. Ethan's reaction is a mix of shock, anger, and despair. He feels betrayed, like the ground beneath him has been ripped away. 4. Ethan's inner turmoil. The narrative dives deep into Ethan's emotional breakdown. He leaves the house, unable to stay in the same space as Lily. The sense of abandonment, isolation, and confusion overwhelm him. He wanders through the streets, unable to think clearly. His mind races as he replays moments from their relationship, wondering how long she had been seeing David and whether everything they had was a lie. Ethan confronts himself, struggling with his own vulnerabilities. He questions his role in the marriage. Was he neglectful? Was he to blame for not noticing the signs? The internal dialogue should be filled with self-doubt, which is crucial for building the complexity of his character. Ethan meets up with an old friend, Jake, who has been a part of his life for years but hasn't been in touch lately. Jake listens to Ethan's pain, offering support and some harsh truths. Jake reveals that sometimes people are too afraid of confronting their own flaws, and it's easier to point the blame elsewhere. This offers a moment of reflection for Ethan. 5. The fallout. The chapter moves toward the aftermath of Lily's confession. They both try to return to normal life, but the weight of what's been said is impossible to ignore. Ethan feels like he's walking through life in a daze. Lily begins to understand the full extent of what she has done. Ethan's anger, his silence, the absence of trust in their relationship all begin to haunt her. She wants to fix it, but she doesn't know if she can. The tension between them is unbearable, and both are on the edge of deciding what comes next. Ethan calls a family meeting, asking Lily's parents to come over. He wants to confront her, to explain to everyone what has happened. But when her parents arrive, the emotional chaos peaks. Lily's mother tries to defend her daughter, saying it's just a mistake. But Ethan isn't interested in excuses anymore. 6. The decision point. The chapter ends with Ethan alone in the living room. Lily has gone to bed, and he's left with nothing but his thoughts. His anger has dissipated, and what remains is the unbearable weight of sadness and loss. Ethan decides that he cannot stay in this marriage without trust. He writes a letter, something he's never done before, expressing his feelings to Lily and what he's going to do next. It's a moment of emotional catharsis. The chapter ends with Ethan packing a bag and walking out the door. The uncertainty of what will happen next lingers in the air. There's a sense of finality in his departure, but also a glimmer of hope that he will find his way again, even if it's without Lily. Chapter themes and emotional depth. Betrayal and confession. Lily's confession of the affair is a pivotal moment in the story. It's the moment of reckoning that sets everything else in motion. Guilt and shame. Lily's struggle with her own emotions after the affair comes out is a central focus of this chapter. Her internal battle and the consequences of her actions are explored deeply. anger and loss. Ethan's emotional journey through anger, confusion, and the devastating loss of trust is the focal point of this chapter. His internal struggles highlight the complexity of dealing with betrayal. Reflection and resolution. By the end of the chapter, Ethan takes a step towards self-healing. This is a crucial moment of personal growth, where he realizes the importance of trust and honesty in relationships. 1. Ethan's isolation. Ethan wakes up in his small apartment, the silence overwhelming. He hasn't fully recovered from the heartbreak of Lily's betrayal. Each morning is a reminder of the life he once had, a life now broken beyond repair. His apartment is sparsely furnished, a stark contrast to the home he shared with Lily. He spends his days working, but his thoughts are never far from her. He becomes more withdrawn from his friends and family, consumed by his own pain. His once vibrant personality is now overshadowed by a cloud of sadness. He constantly questions if the love he once felt for Lily was genuine or if it was all part of the illusion she built around him. The confusion in his heart eats at him. The loss of trust feels like an irreversible damage. Ethan's routine becomes mechanical. Wake up, go to work, come back to the apartment, and stare out of the window, contemplating the life he used to have. His friends notice the change, but he brushes off any concern, telling them he's fine, though he's clearly not. 2. Lily's guilt and desperation. Meanwhile, Lily's life is in turmoil. The house she once felt secure in now feels like a prison. She can't escape the guilt that haunts her every waking moment. Her relationship with David, which once seemed so thrilling, has lost its spark. She finds herself questioning her choices and the path she's taken. There's a deep yearning inside her to fix what she broke, but it's unclear if redemption is even possible. Lily starts therapy, hoping to understand why she made the choices she did. The therapist helped her uncover the emotional neglect she felt in her marriage, though it's clear that she doesn't fully understand the extent of her actions. She still blames Ethan, at least partially, for her affair. However, she's coming to realize that her betrayal wasn't just about him. It was about her own insecurities, fears, and an unwillingness to confront her deepest desires. Lily reaches out to Ethan multiple times, but he avoids her. She sends him messages filled with apologies, but he never replies. She leaves letters in the mailbox, but they go unanswered. She desperately seeks closure, but Ethan's silence only deepens the wound she inflicted. 3. The unexpected encounter. One day, Ethan runs into an old friend, Sarah, at a coffee shop. Sarah is someone from his past, someone he once had feelings for, but their paths diverged over the years. Sarah knows about his recent heartbreak and offers a listening ear. She helps him feel heard, understood, and not so alone in his pain. Their conversation delves into Ethan's emotions. He admits that he feels lost, betrayed by the one person he trusted most in the world. Sarah listens carefully, offering him comfort without judgment. She doesn't try to fix his pain, but simply acknowledges it. The conversation is cathartic for Ethan, and for the first time since the separation, he feels a slight sense of relief. As their conversation unfolds, there is a tension between them, an undeniable chemistry that was once buried deep within their shared history. Sarah is kind and empathetic, and Ethan finds himself drawn to her presence. While he's not ready to move on, he begins to realize that there are people who care about him beyond his marriage to Lily. The encounter leaves Ethan confused but strangely comforted by the idea that there may still be hope for happiness in his life. 4. Lily's desperate reach. Back at the house, Lily is drowning in loneliness. One night, after another round of sleepless hours, she makes a decision. She can't live like this anymore. She's had enough of hiding from the truth and her own guilt. Her desperation reaches its peak, and she contacts Ethan once more, insisting that they meet face to face. She tells him that she needs him to listen, that she can't carry the burden of her actions alone. Ethan reluctantly agrees to meet at a neutral location, a park near their old home. As he drives there, he feels an odd mixture of anger, bitterness, and lingering love for her. When he arrives, Lily is sitting on a bench, her eyes red from crying. She looks small, broken, and vulnerable, a far cry from the woman who betrayed him months ago. The meeting is tense, and the conversation doesn't go the way Lily hopes. She tells Ethan that she's sorry, that she's been reflecting on everything, and that she wants to try to fix things. Ethan listens quietly, his face unreadable. He's not ready to forgive her yet. His pain is too raw, too fresh. He demands that Lily explain why she did it, why she threw their marriage away for a fleeting affair. Lily stumbles through her words, trying to justify her actions. She talks about feeling neglected, unseen, and emotionally unfulfilled. She admits that she sought validation from David because she felt ignored by Ethan. Her confession is painful, but it's the truth, and as she speaks, Ethan can't help but feel a deep sense of betrayal, not just from her actions, but from the truth of what she's been hiding from him all along. The conversation ends in silence. Neither knows what to say next. Ethan tells Lily that he needs time. He's still unsure about what to do with their relationship, but one thing is clear: trust has been shattered, and it may never be restored. 5. The aftermath. After the meeting, Ethan feels torn. The confrontation with Lily has given him some clarity, but it has also opened old wounds. His emotions are a whirlwind of anger, sorrow, and confusion. He returns to his apartment, but the isolation feels heavier than ever. Meanwhile, Lily tries to process the conversation, but she is left with more questions than answers. She doesn't know how to fix what she's broken, and the weight of her guilt continues to consume her. She reaches out to David, but their relationship feels emptier than before. He's no longer the comforting presence he once was. The affair has lost its appeal, and she feels more alone than ever. Ethan continues to distance himself from everyone, including his family. He's unsure whether he can ever trust again, and the thought of starting over feels overwhelming. But Sarah's kindness lingers in his mind, and he finds himself wondering if it's possible to rebuild a life outside of his marriage. 6. Ethan's decision. The chapter closes with Ethan at a crossroads. He spends the night reflecting on the love he once shared with Lily, the life they built, and the love he's still clinging to, even if it's just a memory. He knows that he can't continue living in the past, but he's unsure if he can let go of the woman he once loved. The decision looms large. Should he try to rebuild with Lily, or is it time to walk away for good? Ethan is left staring out the window, contemplating the uncertain future ahead. The pain is still raw, but something inside him tells him that healing is possible, if only he can find the courage to make the hard choice. 1. The tipping point. It's been several weeks since Ethan and Lily's last conversation at the park, and neither has moved on from the emotional weight of their past. Ethan has immersed himself in work, doing everything to avoid confronting his feelings. But despite his attempts at distraction, there's an unsettling emptiness in his life that won't go away. The ghost of Lily lingers in his mind, and every quiet moment seems to draw him back to the pain they caused each other. Meanwhile, Lily has continued to spiral into guilt, trying to find a way to redeem herself and fix the mess she created. Her conversations with her therapist become more intense as she grapples with her deep-seated insecurities and inability to feel emotionally fulfilled in her marriage. She now realizes that the affair wasn't just about seeking external validation. It was about her inability to confront her own fear of failure to meet her own expectations and those placed on her by others. The realization hits her like a ton of bricks. She needs to stop running from her mistakes and take full responsibility for her actions. The question is whether Ethan will ever forgive her or if she's lost him forever. 2. Ethan's decision to meet again. Ethan hasn't returned Lily's calls for the past few weeks, but as the days pass, a sense of urgency starts to build inside him. The thoughts of their life together, the love they once shared, and the home they built start to outweigh the pain of her betrayal. He finds himself stuck in a paradox, unable to move forward, yet terrified of looking back. The man he was with Lily still feels present in him, but he's afraid that forgiveness might make him weak, that reopening the wound would destroy whatever semblance of peace he's found since their separation. However, one evening, After a long, quiet day of contemplation, Ethan finally makes the decision to meet with Lily again. This time, it's not to seek answers or to revisit the past. He wants closure. He needs to know if there's a way for him to reclaim the peace he's lost. The meeting is not about reconciliation. It's about confronting the truth one final time, about their marriage, their failures, and their future. He contacts Lily and suggests they meet at a nearby cafe. The conversation will not be easy, but he's convinced it's the only way for either of them to move on. 3. Lily's own moment of truth. The night before the meeting, Lily lies awake in bed, unable to sleep. She feels as though she's been holding her breath for weeks, and now, finally, she has a chance to face Ethan with her truth. The thought of confronting him fills her with dread, but it also excites her. She has spent so long running away from her mistakes, trying to numb the guilt and regret, that now, finally, she can face it head-on. She replays every conversation, every argument, every betrayal in her mind. She knows that Ethan deserves to hear the full story, not just her side, but everything, the insecurities, the doubts, and the emotional abandonment that led her to make choices that tore their lives apart. But even as she steels herself to face him, she wonders, is it too late for forgiveness? Has she done too much damage for him to ever trust her again? The closer it gets to their meeting, the more nervous she becomes. But there's no turning back. She has made the choice to come clean, to be completely honest with him, no matter how much it might hurt them both. 4. The cafe, a final confrontation. When they meet at the cafe, there's an eerie sense of familiarity between them. The space feels foreign now. Their once comfortable silence is now replaced by a heavy, almost suffocating tension. They sit across from each other, both unsure of how to begin. For a long moment, neither speaks. Their eyes meet, and Ethan can see the vulnerability in Lily's expression, something he's rarely seen since her betrayal. For the first time in what feels like forever, she's not hiding behind walls. She's exposed, raw, and desperate for redemption. Lily is the first to break the silence, her voice trembling but steady as she apologizes again for the hurt she caused him. She admits that her affair was not just about their marriage, but about her inability to cope with her own unresolved issues. She tells him about the loneliness she felt, the emotional distance that grew between them over the years. She wasn't just seeking validation from David. She was seeking something she felt she lost when they stopped communicating, when they stopped being a team. She pleads with him to understand that her actions were a result of deep-seated pain, not malicious intent. Ethan listens intently, his mind and heart at war. He wants to scream at her, tell her how much she destroyed him, but instead, he sits quietly, absorbing every word. There's something in her eyes that makes him pause. He can see how deeply sorry she is, and for the first time in a long time, he's able to glimpse the woman he once loved. The memories of their happiest moments flash before him, and it cuts him like a knife. When she finishes speaking, Ethan is silent for what feels like an eternity. He's not ready to forgive, but he's not ready to condemn her either. He admits that he still loves her, that a part of him will always love her. But trust is not something that can be repaired so easily. His heart is still bruised, and the anger he feels toward her is still fresh. Lily begs him not to give up on them, not to give up on what they shared. But Ethan knows that love, however deep, is not enough to rebuild the foundation of their marriage. They need more than just feelings. They need understanding, trust, and time. And for that, he's uncertain if he can offer her a second chance. 5. The path forward. After their conversation, Ethan walks away from the cafe, feeling more conflicted than ever. He still loves Lily, but he also knows that their relationship has been irrevocably changed. The question that lingers in his mind is whether he can ever truly trust her again, or if the scars of the past will forever taint their future. The idea of rebuilding a life with her feels daunting, and yet the thought of living without her is equally painful. As he drives home, Ethan realizes that there is no easy answer. The future is uncertain, and he's not sure if he's ready to open himself up to her again. He's been hurt too deeply, and though part of him wants to forgive her, another part is terrified of getting hurt again. Meanwhile, Lily returns home, feeling both relieved and defeated. She has faced her guilt and told Ethan everything she's been carrying for so long. She knows that there's still a long road ahead, but for the first time in weeks, she feels like she started to rebuild herself, not just for Ethan, but for herself as well.